Welcome to Intentism Shows. This is the official podcast of the Intentism movement. The Intentist movement it comprises various artists and photographers and writers and musicians and actors and philosophers that all maintain one thing, that all meaning is the imperfect outworking of intention. And these Intentism shows talk about this and other things, and we have various guests on, particularly creative guests, where we can talk about areas of authorship and areas of intention. And it's a privilege for me today to welcome a lovely friend of mine, Samantha Norman, who I'm sure you will know is a daughter of Barry Norman, perhaps the most influential and most famous film critic for many, many decades here in the UK. And she's also the daughter of Diana Norman, who wrote under the pen name Ariana Franklin, writing many books. Quite a few of them weren't just successful, but won awards, particularly the historical crime fiction Mistress of the Art of Death. So welcome, Sam. Thank you so much for being with us.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you. I was just trying to think when we were talking about doing this little conversation about when we first met, and I thought it might be nice for the viewers to sort of have that as a background. Do you remember how we met and what that was for?
Yeah, I do remember. Well, you came to paint my portrait, didn't you?
Yeah.
And you were a very, very young artist, I think almost fresh out of art school. You got this brilliant idea. You were so clever, and you contacted. You were going to do an exhibition about people in the media, weren't you?
Yes.
And I think, didn't you get out a who's who and go through the list? And you wrote us all the most wonderful, very seductive letters.
Yes.
Pandering to everybody's egos, and mine. And you came, and we became friends, didn't we? Because I did a lot of sittings for you, and it was just a joy. You're one of those people. It's just lovely to have you around in the house. And
that's so sweet. And just to say something back to you, I mentioned this to you before, but I haven't met many people that are in the public eye, but I obviously met a few at that particular concentrated period of time. But I've not met anyone that has reached such a level of success as yourself, and obviously also your parents, that have remained so generous and humble. So I really appreciated that as well.
Well, you're not difficult to be nice to.
Thank you very much, Sam. Wonderful. So we're going to be thinking about this book. Now, I bought it and I read it a few months ago, and it's called Winter Siege. Intentism, as much as anything else, is intrigued and interested in the interface and the interplay between author and work. And one particular thing that makes this book almost unique is that it has two authors. So, Sam, are you able to sort of explain a little bit how that happened, please?
Well, yeah, I was, when I met you, I was a television presenter. And my mother was a novelist, as you explained. My father was, film critic. And I had always written features for magazines and newspapers. It's kind of what I enjoy doing best in a way. But I'd never written anything longer than about, 2,000 words. Anyway, we'll sort of skip forward a bit. And my mother, who'd established quite a reputation, died halfway through a novel, and we had to decide what was going to happen to this, this work, which the publishers were waiting for. And I managed to persuade her agent that I should be the one to finish it. I don't know why, because I didn't. But anyway, so she'd written half of this thing, and I took it on and wrote the second half, and it was so it was a very sort of strange collaboration with my dead mother in a funny sort of way. But I could. It was extraordinary. I mean, this hasn't probably not relevant to intentism, but I could kind of hear her voice the whole time I was doing it, and I got ideas that I'm quite sure somehow came from her to finish it and to sort of marry up the plot as she had left it with, whatever. So
wonderful. Well, that's very much related to intentism, and I think we'll look at that in a little bit more detail in a moment or two about whether ideas come from the text and the characters and the plot, or whether the ideas come from author style and that sort of thing. Could you tell us briefly a little bit about the plot, please?
Okay, well, the plot, it's set in that's the other thing, set in the 12th century. So I had to become an immediate expert on the 12th century. It's my mother's favorite period. It's about the war, that actually England's first civil war, really, between Stephen and Matilda. It's a war of succession after Henry I died. And it's about a girl who gets sort of caught up in it all, and it's about her. Essentially, it's her story, how she sort of navigates through this terribly lawless, anarchic period, and her relationship with what is he? What is Gwyll? He's anyway, this man who saves her from certain death, and
Wonderful. It's a great story. I read it in about 2.5 days, actually. I really enjoyed reading it. So thank you. Yeah. I was trying to, as I was reading it, I don't know if I meant to do this, but because I say that I'm interested in sort of the background, the kind of the creative forces behind it, it is seamless. I don't know whether you would want to mention this to us or not, but I was trying to work out whether there is a kind of creative change, and I really couldn't tell. I was wondering whether the Scribe was your idea, or whether that was from the beginning, or can you tell us a little bit more about that? Or
the Scribe, who's basically the narrator of the story, know that was my mum, but I had to make it seamless. So I had to there were certain bits that I had to of hers that I had to rewrite. So it's incredibly sort of my style and her style are very similar. She taught me to write basically when I first showed an interest in journalism. And so we did write very similarly, but it all becomes very enmeshed, the whole thing. And I think because she was my mother, I was able to do that because I knew her voice so well and her work so well. And there was a sort of
yes. Well, if I can just sort of push you on that and get you to just talk about it a little bit more. I don't know how difficult it is to unravel, but I do find that fascinating. And when we were speaking about this a few days ago, I was asking you about whether you were thinking about if you could create a world in front of the text, a real world, what these characters would do, and just run with that, or whether you were also thinking about what your mother might do with these characters. I mean, can you flesh out that a little bit more as well?
I think it was it's a very complicated thing to do, because I think a little bit of both of those things went on. I think if you're going to write convincingly, your characters have to become real, and they have to have almost a life outside yours, even though you're creating. But I was also very aware, as I was writing it, of my mother's reputation, for starters. There's a lot of pressure on me to get that right, and what she actually intended, where the story should go. Because I mean, I could have taken it anywhere, but I really do think I got it right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's brilliant. I as I said before, it was certainly something I didn't feel I could put down, and I didn't feel that there was any particular moment where it jarred, where there might be another writer that had taken over. Can you tell us a little bit about your research? Because for me, I don't know how you would start to research in enough detail to do the characters and the environment justice. How do you go about doing that?
Well, that was also difficult, because my mother when she died, she was writing a series of novels. So when I hadn't read any of this one that I actually finished. I presumed that it was going to be part of that series, in which case it would have been quite easy to finish it. But this actually was a standalone. She'd kind of gone rogue and decided to write something earlier than her normal, the normal period that she wrote about. So the research I had to start from scratch. I mean, I read all her novels, everything she ever wrote. So I got the style and I got the idea of the characterization and whatnot. But then I went off to, there's an amazing institution. Unfortunately, it's private. You have to pay for it. It's called the London Library. But it is incredible. You can get any book in the world there. And it's just the most beautiful place. It's in St. James's Square. And I spent a lot of time in there. I got loads and loads of books, and I read everything I could possibly get my hands on. My mother's library, I transported it to here, and it was, so yeah, I just read and read and read. It's a
Wow.
strange existence. Yeah.
It's very impressive. And what about the female characters, particularly the female leads? Because I think you've got strong characters like Maud, but what interested me about the characters, as I say, if I give the example of Maud, that she surrenders the first siege because she has her stepson William. And the father couldn't care less. So it seemed to me that the very strong female leads still have these kind of maternal instincts. I mean, what was your ideas behind those strong leads?
Yeah, I think well, I sort of come from I am, very staunchly feminist. I come from a long line of them, and I think women are kind of scuppered by their maternal instincts. I don't know, but I think I think writing strong women is fascinating, and there were a lot of them in the 12th century. An awful lot of unsung heroines. I mean, there are a lot of men going off to wars on crusade and whatnot, leaving their women behind who had to run the place, these great and become quite, key domestic strategists and very powerful in their own right.
Mm. Perhaps one last question related to not your intention, perhaps, certainly not directly related to the book, but the intentions of the characters. And that's, I was interested in motives, so intention through motives, and with Gwyll. So Gwyl's motive for revenge in the book, for Penda, was that, do you think, primarily for her, or was it some kind of penance for God?
I think it's a bit of both. I mean, God was obviously much more powerful in those days than to them than he is to us now. But I think Gwyll had a sort of very paternal instinct towards Penda. So there was that, he was going to protect her at all costs. His wife and child had been killed, so he had that intent as well. So yeah.
Wonderful. And when you write your novels, do you have a particular writing style, as in not as in whether it's similar to your mother's or not, but do you have an approach to it, sort of where you write, what time of day you write, those sort of things?
I normally sit here, and it's literally a matter of committing your ass to the chair for as long as it takes to get it done. There's no, there's, for me anyway, there's no inspiration. It's just, you just grind it out and make sure that you just keep writing, even when you.
Are you one of those writers that rather than say I will get to this point in the plot, or just where my inspiration dries up or something along those lines, instead of that, are you one of those writers that say I always commit myself to 10,000 words a day, or have a numeric number?
No, I can't do that. I mean, 10,000 is an awful lot of words. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it would happen, and that would be a miracle. And then, then you go back the next day and you read over what you've done, and you realize you have to rewrite it all, or cut, most of it or something. It's the most frustrating job I can think of, actually. Yeah, it's really. But yeah, no, I think you just have to turn up and be, and write, and then rewrite. It's all. I think that book was created in the edit, because I would sit and I would write and write and write, and then I'd go back and make sense of it. And I think that's how I work.
Wonderful. That again is something that Intentists are very interested in, because we've had various people say to us, well, I can see that with maybe like writing or painting, there is a very noticeable a creative journey from the first conception to the actual work on the page, and the intention is very clear with kind of macro and micro intentions. But other things like photography, I've had various people say to me, surely when you take a photograph, ultimately what you're taking a photograph of is what's already there, and you're just capturing something other people can see. But I saw an exhibition, I think it was a Bailey
question.
Sorry?
What do you say to that question?
I say your answer, edit, because I saw an exhibition, a Bailey exhibition quite a while ago, and it was fascinating because he didn't exhibit large prints. He exhibited his contact sheet with sort of all the negatives, like 30 odd images, 36 images, 24 images or whatever, and then with a crayon circling the one he wanted. And to me, that was fascinating because that's your creative eye. It's like an artist. There's a well-known philosopher that supported us right from the day one, called Paisley Livingston. He's a professor of philosophy in Lingham University in Hong Kong, and he wrote probably the biggest book and the best book about intentism in the arts, called Art and Intention. At the beginning, he mentions a painter that struggles to do something with intention, foresight, and very clearly are organizing. I think it might have been the froth on a horse's mouth, and he gets very angry and he walks away and either throws a sponge or kicks something at the painting, and then the sponge or whatever he kicks hits the painting, and that effect there is perfect. Now, that wasn't intended, but then the painter can say, well, what do I do with that? Do I keep it? Do I erase it? Do I edit in some way? And I think that's where that intention still manifests itself in the creative journey to the finished work.
Interesting example.
So I was interested in what you said about editing, actually.
Yeah, it's always, I think, especially with writing, I think it's always in the editing. It's like making a sort of patchwork, but trying to make it seamless as well. And it's layering and, adding texture all the time. And actually, once you've written something, you can kind of see the intention more clearly. It becomes organic.
Yes, yeah. Fascinating. And do you have any other books coming out in the near future?
I'm sort of after that one, I wrote another one, which was finishing off my mother's series called Death and the Maiden, which is out already. And that finishes off I'm leaving the 12th century around, I'm leaving it for the time being. I'm doing a modern thriller.
Wonderful, wonderful. And any ideas when that might be coming out, or early days?
Early days.
Wonderful. And if anyone who's watching is interested, and I'm sure many will, in purchasing this book and reading, I presume it's on Amazon, is it? Where can we get this book?
It's on Amazon. Yeah, on Amazon. I mean, it's awful, isn't it? Amazon, but
yes,
where everything comes from.
Yeah, at the moment. Yeah, wonderful. Well, thank you so much. It's been enlightening. It's been really interesting. It's been funny. It's been fantastic. So thank you so much, Sam, for joining me on this Intentism shows. And I wish you all the best for the rest of the day. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Vittorio. Always a pleasure to see you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.